Welcome in, Ghost Schools. Tonight, we're delving into the shadows, exploring a case so profoundly disturbing it continues to haunt the darkest corners of history. We're talking about a man whose name sends shivers down the spine of anyone who knows his story. A man who embodied pure evil. Tonight, we uncover the horrifying truth behind Albert Fish. Albert Fish was born on May 19, 1870, in Washington, D.C. He is a notorious American serial killer, cannibal, and child rapist who became one of the most infamous figures in true crime history. His early life was marked by tragedy and mental instability, which would later influence his horrific actions. Before we get into this, I just want to note that this is a very gruesome story, and if you have a weak stomach, I would suggest clicking off now. Fish was born to a poor family and was the youngest of 3 children. His father, a shipyard worker, died when Fish was just 5 years old, leaving his mother to raise him in a difficult environment. His mother was described as strict and abusive, which could have contributed to Fish's troubled childhood. He was sent to an orphanage at the age of 6. This is where he experienced a lot of physical and sexual abuse. This further impacted his psychological development. It was during this time that he began to have disturbing thoughts and fantasies, including self-mutilation and sadomasochism. As he grew older, Fish developed a fascination with pain and torture, both inflicting it on himself by sticking needles into his body and fantasizing about it with others. He later wrote in his journal that this was because of the orphanage where he developed this. Albert was taken out of the orphanage at the age of 12 by his mother. This is when he started a relationship with another young boy, as well as when some of his sexual desires began. These two would drink each other's pee, eat each other's feces, as well as much more bizarre things. In his younger years in the city, he would visit bathhouses just to watch men undress, as well as writing very obscene letters to women in newspapers that often would result in him getting the police called on himself. When he was 20, he moved to New York and worked as a male prostitute and began to sexual assault many young boys, generally around the age 6 or younger. Albert's mother arranged a marriage for him and he married in 1898. He had 6 children. Albert worked as a painter, and because of this he would travel a lot. It was during this time of his life where he met a young man named Thomas Kent who was mentally disabled. Albert brought Thomas out to a barn in the middle of the woods that was slightly abandoned, and he began what is called his 2-week torture of Thomas Kent. He would keep him there and force him to engage in a lot of gruesome activities, like eating feces off of each other, drinking each other's urine, beating him, burning him, and at one point it even went as far as him literally cutting off half of his groin. Albert described this incident in his journal as well, saying in quotes, "I shall never forget his scream or the look he gave me." He originally planned to kill him, but he ended up dressing his wounds in Vaseline and peroxide, kissed him on the cheek, and left him in the barn. He later wrote in his journal saying he never even knew what happened to him. At this point, we don't know if he had killed anyone yet, but eventually his dark impulses led him to engage in pedophilia and cannibalism. Fish's first known crime occurred in 1924. This is where he lured a young boy named Francis McDonald to a secluded area where he murdered him. He lured him by offering him candy and telling him he would take him to a party. He later claimed to have eaten parts of the boy's body, a theme that would reoccur in many of his later crimes. Between 1924 and 1932, Fish committed a series of heinous acts, primarily targeting young children. He would often lure his victims with promises of food or money, then abduct, torture, and eventually kill them. He was known for his sadistic methods, including using a variety of instruments to inflict pain. His crimes were not only brutal, but also deeply disturbing. As Fish often engaged in cannibalism, believing that it gave him sort of a sense of power over his victims, in his words. One of the most infamous cases attributed to Fish was the abduction and murder of 10-year-old Grace Budd in 1928. Fish had befriended Grace's family, posing as a man looking for work. They had placed work signs all around town asking if anybody was looking for it, and he claimed to have been. He convinced Grace's parents to let him take her to a party, but instead, he took her to a secluded area that he had previously picked out, and there he killed her. Fish later wrote a letter to Grace's mother detailing the gruesome events and his cannibalistic acts. This letter ultimately led to his capture, as police were able to trace it. Now, trigger warning, because I will read the letter. It is very gruesome, it's very violent. If you wish to skip it, do it now. I will put where you can skip to once the letter's over. The letter read, on Sunday, June the 3rd, 1928, I called on you at 406 W 15th Street. Brought you pot cheese, strawberries. We had lunch. Grace sat in my lap and kissed me. I made up my mind to eat her. On the pretense of taking her to a party, you said yes, she could go. I took her to an empty house in Winchester I had already picked out. When we got there, I told her to remain outside. She picked wildflowers. I went upstairs and stripped all of my clothes off. I knew if I did not, I would get her blood on them. When all was ready, I went to the window and called her. Then I hid in a closet until she was in the room. When she saw me all naked, she began to cry and tried to run down the stairs. I grabbed her and she said she would tell her mama. First, I stripped her naked. How she did kick, bite, and scratch. I choked her to death, then cut her in small pieces so I could take my meat to my rooms, cook, and eat it. How sweet and tender her little ass was roasted in the oven. It took me 9 days to eat her entire body. Fish was arrested in 1934 after a long investigation. His capture was largely due to the letter he sent to Grace Spudd's mother, which was traced back to him. Upon his arrest, Fish initially denied his involvement in the crimes, but eventually confessed to multiple murders and cannibalism. His mental state was evaluated, and he was found to be insane, which led to a highly publicized trial. During the trial, Fish's disturbing behavior and graphic confessions shocked the public. He was ultimately found guilty of murder and was sentenced to death. On January 16, 1936, Albert Fish was executed in the electric chair at Sing Sing Prison in New York. Good riddance. His life and crimes left a lasting impact on society, serving as a chilling reminder of the depths of humane depravity. Fish's story is not just about the gruesome acts he committed, but also about the complex psychological issues that drove him to such extremes. His life serves as a case study in understanding the mind of a serial killer and the factors that can lead to such horrific behavior. Albert Fish continues to haunt the annals of true crime, making him one of the most infamous figures in American criminal history. This was a really rough story to tell. It was very violent and it was very gruesome, and it was just really sad to read and research about. If you guys are interested in hearing more stories like this, I will post 2 to 3, maybe 4 times a week. If you guys just want to subscribe, like the video so I know you liked it, I will post more things like this. Thank you.